Before we dive into the new features of RightFax 20.2 and 21.2, let's talk about OpenText procedures and policies. On this slide, you can see the RightFax product lifecycle matrix. The key takeaway here is dates each version of RightFax goes into sustaining maintenance. RightFax 21.2 will not go into sustaining maintenance until August of 2026. RightFax 10.6 and older is currently in sustaining maintenance. For anyone that doesn't know what sustaining maintenance is, if you look on the slide, it really defines it. It just means that Advantage and OpenText will support those versions on a best effort basis. But the real takeaway from this slide is if you have a version of RightFax in sustaining maintenance, Advantage and OpenText will do our best effort to support the product. But be aware, there'll be no new development for any bugs or software defects and no new product defect reports. Now let's discuss core product enhancements in RightFax 20.2 and 21.2. RightFax isn't just a fax solution, it's an entire workflow solution. The workflow enhancements starting in 20.2 transform fax images into structured files with actionable data. Later in the webinar, we'll do a demo where you can see the new and improved visual workflow builder. This allows administrators to easily design the path your data needs to take through your designed inbound workflow process. Administrators can now build multiple completion paths within workflows, set time limits, alerts, exceptions, and notifications to expedite data entry processes. Next, we'll take a dive into one of the greatest improvements to RightFax workflows, exceptions. As I just mentioned, new with RightFax, administrators now have the option to create an exception workflow. This means faxes can be diverted and then returned to the workflow, allowing users to address issues or special exceptions to the fax. Later, we'll walk through how exception handling has been updated to enable users to visually assess which faxes require corrected metadata with color-coded exceptions and field-level validation. This allows them to quickly address the issue and return the fax to the workflow, ensuring downstream processing of all inbound faxes. Intelligent Workflows introduces automated fax data extraction and is available in desktop and web clients. It uses the built-in automated zonal OCR based on the OpenText intelligent capture engine and integrates seamlessly with the existing RightFax workflows technology. This means that administrators can effortlessly design OCR capture templates that work with any fax image within the RightFax system. This transforms inbound faxes into semi-structured files with actionable data, which accelerates and automates fax data extraction. Processed faxes can be easily found by searching for keywords in the metadata. By utilizing intelligent workflows, organizations can virtually all but eliminate manual tasks and data entry, reducing errors and improving information sharing. Workflow data can be seamlessly integrated into an EMR system or external database. For security-prone organizations, Intelligent Workflows maintains an auditable trail of each fax as it moves through the system, ensuring regulatory compliance while maintaining high security standards for sensitive information. RightFax Intelligent Workflows uses a custom image editor so you can easily define your zonal OCR fields. You can predefine data types to help improve accuracy and reliability. Templates can be reused across multiple workflows to eliminate duplicate efforts. And although not 100% accurate, handwritten fields are recognized and converted. I would always recommend defining a verification step in your workflow to confirm your data was accurately OCR'd, especially when using handwritten. Another new feature is the ability for RightFax to capture a checkbox. This feature uses advanced OCR processing to recognize and process whether checkboxes are checked or empty. This can be very helpful to organizations that leverage checkbox fields with documents like intake forms, medical histories, and other complex forms. By adding checkbox capture with zonal capture, most organizations will be able to fully capture any standard medical form. Exception handling has been updated to indicate exceptions clearly in the fax list. This is where users can now visually assess which faxes require corrected metadata with color-coded exceptions and field-level validation. Next, we'll do a demo of this enhancement and show how easily workflows can be set up within virtually any organization. Okay, so what we're seeing here now is a system that has RightFax 21.2 loaded. It is a full RightFax server, and we're going to do the demonstration on this system. So let me start by showing you the documents that we'll be faxing in. So on my C drive, under my file attachment folder, I have a couple of PDFs here. So I'm going to do two of them for the demo. I'm going to do a standard, I guess this is like a patient intake form. Has some information about a patient, the date of birth, what their treatment was, what their injury was, details about the patient, some check boxes, insurance details on the bottom. So it has a lot of data. I'll also fax in an exception. So the same form actually, but I have a mistake on here on purpose. I think the date. If we look at the date field, which is over here, you're going to see it's missing some data. And that would be the date field of the, let's see. Sorry, right here, date of consultation is missing the year. So let's begin. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to bring up the RightFax client. Just so you know, this can also be done using the web client. I'm going to do the demo with the client just because it's a little quicker and it's a little easier for me to go to different folders. So first thing I'm going to do is fax in two documents. So the first one I'm going to fax in will be the standard one, and the next one will be the exception. So I'm faxing it into 917-386-5102. That is a number associated with the workflow. So any documents that are faxed into this number will be entered into that workflow. The workflow is going to look at the document. It's going to scan all the fields, and it's going to pull out the data from the fields. Once the data is pulled out from the fields, we can export it into a CSV file, an XML, import it into an external system. There's a lot of things you could do. So let's just get this going. So I'm just going to do a basic fax here. And I don't need a cover sheet on here, but I do need to choose my attachment. So here's where I'm going to pick the document. So let's do the standard one first, new patient sheet. This one's ready to go. So it has the fax number, just a name, the attachment. I'm going to send it. I'll do another one. I'll do it to the same number because I want it to go to the same workflow. Put a different doctor name on. Do Dr. Rogers. Don't need a cover sheet on here either. And this time I'll choose the one with the exception. And send. Okay, so these are being generated. These are real faxes. They're going to go out and they're going to come into the Webinar Pharmacy 1 workflow. So while we're waiting for this to be converted and sent, let me show you how I define these workflows. So go back to the Fax Manager here, and you can see under the Fax Manager there's a new field here called Workflows. Under these workflows, I'm going to go to the 3 workflows that are associated with this demonstration, which would be Webinar Pharmacy 1, Webinar Pharmacy 2, and Webinar Exception. If I right click and I edit Webinar Pharmacy 1, you could see how I define all my fields. So what I do first is give it a title. I define what users or groups are going to have access to this workflow. So anyone in the Webinar Assistant group will have access to this workflow. So when the fax comes into this workflow, anyone in that group will have access to look at it, look at the data, edit it, maybe move it on to another workflow. And then I define all the fields. So here's all the fields: patient name, address, social security number, city, state, zip code, all the information, a lot of fields. And you'll see in a minute where I define these all and why. And then I define if they're required. Right now, I think I just made the name required. Everything else I said no, which is fine. And then action. So now I'm deciding what I want to do after this workflow is complete. So we could submit it to another workflow, which we are going to do, which is Webinar Pharmacy 2. We could do nothing. We can route it to another RightFax user. So there's a lot of different things you could do. And then there's exceptions too. So we're saying if there's an exception, something on this workflow that's not right, or the data that comes in that's not right, we're going to send it to a different workflow. So if I'm going to hit cancel, now if I right click on here and hit automate, you'll see how I define the fields here, the OCR fields. So as you can see, these little blue boxes are surrounding the fields that I defined to OCR. So for example, let me pick one here. Let's take insured's name. So if I go down to in name of insurer or insured's name here, let's see, insured name, I can actually clear it. So I can unmark it. And you'll notice that that field now is not highlighted anymore. The blue box is gone. If I want to put it back again, I can say mark zone. I put my cursor around it. I'd like to do it a little larger than the field if I can. Not too big because I don't want to get in the way. Now anything that's in this field will be OCR'd. Now it's back. So I can say save. So these are all the fields that it's going to do zonal OCR. And so as this fax comes in, it's going to know that the date of consultation here, it's going to look for anything in this field here, move it to the corresponding field, which would be the date of consultation, which is right here, date of consultation. So it'll actually move it there. So I'm going to save it. Close it. And let's see if our faxes are done yet. They are. Perfect. So now, since I sent them both to this number, they're both going to show up in this Webinar Pharmacy 1. And there they are. Perfect. So let's take a look at what we got. So the first one that came in at 5:03 was the one that didn't have the exception. So let's take a look. So I'm going to double click on it. Okay, so the fax came in and it looks pretty good. As you can see, it has almost all the fields filled out. And it did a pretty good job. It has the patient name, the patient address. This is real data that it extracted from these fields. There is one exception here. Patient date of birth must be a valid date. What it did, for some reason, it picked up an extra 7. Maybe there was a smudge or something on the document. So what I'm going to do is I can overwrite it right now. I don't need to send this to an exception because I know the data is right. It's just an extra field. So I'm going to hit the backspace and now it's fine. You can see it turns white. It gets rid of the the faded yellow color and shows white to show that I by hand updated it. And this looks good. So right now I can go down to the bottom. I can complete this workflow and save. What that'll do is move it out of this workflow, Pharmacy 1, and move it to Webinar Pharmacy 2. Now I didn't really explain earlier, but Webinar Pharmacy 2 is more of the approval process. This is where maybe a manager will look at it and make sure everything is done right and just decide if this is going to move out to real data and be exported. So they're going to open it up here. You can see there's different metadata here. They do have access to the original metadata, and there it is, and the corrected data. And you can see it was done by hand because it's a different color. And they can double check, make sure everything looks good. And if they're happy, they can go down to their metadata here. And they could say approved, yes. Maybe add a note and then put in their name. So Jeff K approved it. And now they're going to complete the workflow. They can add a comment and save. this point, it leaves this workflow. Now, if you remember earlier, I showed you some of the options, and one of them was when a workflow is complete, we could move it to a fax user. And that's what happens. After Webinar Pharmacy 2, that document was moved to just a standard RightFax user. And that user, all it does is dump the file and the metadata to a folder on the computer. So I'm going to show you right here. So if I go here, we'll see there it is. And here's the workflow values. So let's take a look. This was saved in an XML or XSL format. In this case, it's XML. And it has all the data. So there it is, the case type, appointment date confirmed. That was the check boxes, so they were confirmed. The details of the injury, the MRI, all the information is here. Now remember, this could be CSV, could be tab separated, any format you need, or maybe your application needs to import this data into it. So it's customizable, it's pretty nice. There's the second workflow, Webinar Pharmacy 2 with the approved. This could be done separately. In this case, I combined it all and then who approved it. So all your metadata now is in a separate file. Pretty nice. I'm going to close this up, minimize this, and let's go back to our fax util and let's look at the exception, the one that came in here, 503. So let's take a look. And you'll know right away, because when I go into it and I slide this down, there'll be a red. There it is. Date of consultation must be a valid date. It knows right away it's not a valid date. It's missing the year. Now, I don't know the year, so this is an exception. I can't by hand put it in because I have no idea what year this was done, and I wouldn't have a right to do it unless I knew it. So I will say exception. Save. Now it goes to a different workflow, the webinar exception. And there it is. Now who's ever responsible for monitoring the exception workflows can go in, look at it, look at the original metadata, and act on it. Maybe their job would be to contact this person, get that data that is incorrect, which is down here, and fix it. So at this point, they would maybe call that person or the doctor or the pharmacy, whoever it was, and get, maybe it was 2021. Do it. They can do save. They can save and keep, or they can complete, and this way we'll complete. They can add a comment and save. And it's gone. And this can be then exported back out, just like we did before, to the CSV file or the XML file, and the data can be used to import into a third-party app or anything you want. So that's your basic workflows. Pretty powerful. As I mentioned, it'll work with just about any kind of form. You do need to know the form beforehand and set up your fields, but as long as you have the forms and you know there's a certain form you receive, it's going to work great. So next we'll go through some of the new features that are now part of RightFax 20.2 and 21.2. So let's start by going into some of the new API-based connectors for Epic and Allscripts. The way we get to it is we go into the RightFax Web Admin tool. And as you can see, I can just click on Web Admin from my website here. And it does use AD integration and pass-through, so it knows who I am. And see, my initial is JE, so it's using my login credentials from my desktop to pass right through. And as you can see, we have our Web Admin, which is just a web-based administration tool that can be used with the web EFM, the thick client EFM, Enterprise Fax Manager. You can use either one. I still like to use the thick client on my desktop. I find it just a little quicker and a little bit more full-featured, but it's getting there. It's almost at the point where it's full-featured. So let's get into this. So let's show the system and integrations. And this is brand new, starting with 20.2 and 21.2, where we have our configure Epic and configure Allscripts. So this is all that has to be done on the RightFax side to integrate with those two EMRs. There is a couple of configuration steps that have to be done on the EMR side, but it's pretty straightforward, and your Epic administrators or Allscripts administrators can definitely get through that pretty quick, and it's a pretty seamless and quick integration. And later during the demo, I have some screenshots on the slides and we'll go through that. Also now, everything in version 20.x uses encryption between client and server. So there is now a TLS and SSL certificate settings here. You have a self-signing tool here. You can also import your own certificate if you want to use it. And that's just for web-based. And then all the thick clients that are talking between RightFax and any servers, so any clients and servers, are also using a secure encrypted connection. Also, what's new is the user administrator now has a default password. It's not the most secure password, it is the word password, but it is not defaulted to no password anymore. So that's the EMR integrations. Next thing I'd like to show is the new web-based fax util, which, unlike the web-based fax manager, I find the web util to be full featured and a great replacement for the thick client. So if I go into the fax util web here, you'll see it. Again, it uses AD pass-through, so there's my name right there, my DID number, and they did a pretty good job of emulating the thick client. So pretty straightforward. I have my folders here. I want to view a fax, double click, comes up pretty quick in its own viewer. The viewer has all the tools that the thick client has, including zoom in, zoom out, rotates, annotations, rubber stamps. It really emulates the thick client exactly. Also, just like the thick client, and new with this version, is the ability, if you have either delegate rights or you're a full administrator, to open up other users. And now you'll get a list of all your users, kind of like the admin mode in the thick client. So you have the ability to move around and go to any user or group you have rights to. We also have the ability to do a thumbnail view. To do the thumbnail view, we will have to pick a fax that has multiple pages. So let's work our way down here and see. Yeah, here's one that's a cover plus one. So I'm going to go into this fax here. And by default, I don't know if the thumbnail view is on. I think it might be off. Oh, in this case, it is on. I apologize. See there, the thumbnail view. To turn it off, you would click here. Okay, we'll close out of here. Also, I wanted to show you what it looks like to create a new fax. So you click the new fax button right here on the upper left, and you'll get a pop-up. The pop-up, as I mentioned earlier, is full featured. So you have the ability to do all the things you could do in the thick client. So you have the ability to obviously put in a fax number, and what it does is as you start to type, it tries to find a match in your phone book. So these are all the numbers in my phone book that start with 2 and 2. I can pick my own here, and it populates the field. So my name, my voice number, company name, the billing code fields here are pre-populated from before. I can add my attachments by dropping a file, which is new in this version. I can also add a library document or a standard file to browse for a file. Here's where I can choose my cover sheet and do a preview. And the preview is pretty nice, so you can make sure that you're sending the proper cover sheet. And as I open up the other fields, you'll see all the features that we have in the thick client is now available in the web client. Let me slide that down, get a look at that. So here's where you can do your copies, different conversion settings, and under settings you have a lot of fields here to what to do before during sending a fax. So you can do a delay send, you can do a certified delivery, automatic deletions. So as I mentioned, it is full featured, and I would recommend going forward that any upgrades to 20.x or greater, you start to use the web client and not worry about a thick client. It's just much easier. You don't have to worry about updating desktops. You don't have to worry about pushing out software or uninstalling old versions and reinstalling new. So now when you upgrade RightFax, all you're doing is either updating the URL to point to the new system, maybe doing a DNS redirect, but nothing has to change on any desktops, which is great, makes it much easier. All right, there's a couple other new features I'd like to show you. we have some security enhancements. So if I go into the Fax Manager and I go into the sync module, so if I go to services and I go to my RightFax sync module here, you'll see when I go into sources and destination, new, create one. I'll call it test for now. I'm just creating my test AD container. I'll also create a, here's the new features actually. So I can create just a standard OpenText RightFax destination, which I will, and this is all the same. But what's new is, I'll drop that down again, so is the LDAP, the OKTA source. That's new, and I'm pretty sure that's used for a lot of things like Google Cloud platforms, Microsoft Azure. A lot of these platforms now are using different kind of authentication, including OAuth, and we do support that. So let's cancel out of here. There are other new features it's hard to show, such as an expanded web API, better email gateway enhancements. I do have a slide to show you some of that, and a couple other features related to security. But I'm going to conclude the demo and let's continue on with the slide presentation. Now let's discuss new add-on connectors for RightFax 20.X and 21.X. The first one we'll discuss is the new certified connector for Epic. This newly certified connector leverages Epic print services, which allows users to send faxes directly from Epic, ensuring fax delivery with real-time tracking of sent and received patient information, including the status of sent faxes with Epic and Epic My Printouts. This makes the integration much easier to configure. You no longer need to configure RightFax FCL files and notification channels. The RightFax integration module will still be required, but for licensing purposes only. This connector is available in the Epic App Orchard. And now RightFax has full support for Allscripts Professional and TouchWorks EHR. This allows users to fax protected health information directly from the Allscripts by leveraging the RightFax web API. Users can send and receive faxes and receive fax status notifications directly in Allscripts. I can't do a live demo of this, but let's quickly walk through how the connector for Allscripts will work. Once the connector is configured, directly in Allscripts you will start to see a Send via RightFax button. The RightFax Allscripts webpage will then open, displaying the patient's name at the top of the list of available documents to fax below. As you can see from the slide, sending faxes from Allscripts will be very easy. You can then select the documents you wish to fax and input the recipient's fax number. You'll also have the opportunity to add more information such as notes and a cover sheet. Then hit send. Once the fax has been submitted using the RightFax web API, the Allscripts connector will process the fax and send the job. For customers that have the MS Exchange connector and install the Outlook plugin, the interface has been upgraded to simplify the user experience of sending a fax. The new integration is built on SMTP, so unlike foreign connectors, it's lightning fast and easy to install and configure. Expanded support for Office 365 and Exchange cache mode is also now available. Developers can utilize the extensive sample code and documentation provided with RightFax 20.X to develop custom integration solutions. This means more leveraging of internal development resources to create cost-effective custom applications that match the look and feel of their other custom applications. RightFax API updates also expand the faxing capabilities to their custom business, mobile, and web applications. RightFax 21.2 also introduced an expansive SDK for REST API and reintroduced the RightFax COM API. Advantage Technologies now has a suite of add-ons that will make your RightFax server more powerful and more functional. The next few slides will go through these add-ons. The Advantage Mail-to-Fax connector will allow users to fax directly from any email client using a simple addressing format. The Mail-to-Fax connector will also fax enable your MFP fleet using the scan to email function. Using this add-on will enable you to remove costly analog lines, reduce license costs, and simplify faxing from both MFPs and your email clients. The Advantage Developer API support includes a 1-year subscription to the OpenText Developer Edition server and up to 8 hours of support with a certified Advantage developer. The support can be used for installation, configuration, and code support. FaxPulse Business Intelligence is an analytics and monitoring add-on for RightFax. FaxPulse BI can be used to isolate issues with your RightFax server. Issues can include transmission errors, conversion errors, or unavailable resources. FaxPulse BI can also be used to maximize the usage of your RightFax channels based on time of day usage, individual or group usage, and day, week, month, or year usage. It also includes a full-featured monitoring tool that will notify you if one of your RightFax services are not running, or if your queues are building higher than a set threshold. Since it is such a powerful and full-featured add-on, I would recommend that you contact your sales associate for a demo of the product. That is really the only way you'll get to see all the features of this powerful tool. Our FaxPulse Automated Inbound, also known as FaxPulse AI, is a great tool to verify your inbound faxing is working correctly. FaxPulse AI will track an inbound fax from the time your server receives the call all the way to various workflows, such as a network folder, an email, or delivery into an application. FaxPulse AI will also send you an email if there is a phone line problem. Okay, let's wrap up by discussing how to plan for a successful migration. One of the most important steps when planning a successful upgrade is to understand which platforms are supported. For RightFax 20.2 and 21.2, we see that we support Windows 2016 and 19, SQL Server 2016 through 19, Outlook 2010 through 19, desktop application from Windows, Microsoft Windows will be version 8, 8.1, and 10, and Citrix Zen 6.2 or later. It's important to note we no longer support Windows Server 2008, SQL Server 2005, Outlook 2007, Internet Explorer 8, 9, and 10, and SharePoint 2007 and 10. So let me walk you through a typical upgrade PS project. We break the upgrade into 4 phases. Phase 1 includes assessments, proposals, and project planning. During this phase, we will document integrations, propose design improvements, and develop a solid project plan. Phase 2 entails a new installation of the RightFax software, system configurations, and migrating existing users, faxes, and any other data. Phase 3 is for user acceptance testing. This is where we would test the new RightFax system and resolve any issues we find during the testing. Finally, phase 4 is a system cutover. This is when we schedule an outage, move the telecom connections and the client connections to the new system. You can also schedule post-cutover support with your Advantage PS engineer to ensure you have a resource ready and waiting when your end users start to use the new system.